Okay, for the first article for March the 30th, what stood out to me is on page 345. None of the parents were transgender themselves. They also noticed, for the parents also noted that it was a daily tightrope walk trying to raise a child in a non-gender conforming environment, but at the same time, they wanted the child to appear less conspicuous when the child was in public. And yes, they did note reasons for this, such as bullying from fellow peers or even fellow adults. On page 349, what stood out to me is a quarter of the cases of the parents, they used excuses that didn't have anything to do with gender. I personally think this may be because, as stated before, none of the parents were transgenders themselves. So I don't think they had that experience of being transgender themselves to fall back on to be more supportive of the child. They themselves felt bound to conform to their gender roles, and they realized that because they had to work harder to conform to their gender roles, it was a little bit harder, if not impossible, but it was a little bit harder to avoid passing it on to the children because you're trying to raise the children in a non-gender conforming environment, whereas you still have to conform to yours. For the second article for April the 1st on page 156, they talked about gender nonconformity, and what stood out to me, because it was stated before in class in person, the gender nonconformity was celebrated more when done by daughters. And for me, that just brought up how in the previous articles we talked about how females were allowed to be more sexually fluid compared to their male counterparts. Whereas if a male tried to do that, it pose a threat to his masculinity. His masculinity may be threatened. For the last article for April the 3rd, what stood out to me was how the parents who believed that gender differences were biological, they saw gender neutral parenting having little effect on the child's gender, but yet, however, these were the same parents who wanted to do away with the gender neutral parenting. They saw it as harmful. And the reason why I see, in my opinion, why I think they would possibly see the gender neutral parenting as harmful is because they may realize that, yes, although the child's biological state is fixed, they realize, even themselves as parents, that the child's gender is fluid, and they're possibly scared that even with the gender neutral parenting, I guess they may see you're indirectly telling the child to embrace a gender nonconformist identity, and I guess that's something that they would choose to do away with altogether.